guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to be talking about Zac Efron, something I probably never pictured myself saying, but here we are. Now, if you don't know, recently there's been pictures, or screenshots rather, of Zac Efron circulating on the internet, most notably on the cesspool that is Twitter. And as usual, nothing good can come of Twitter. And basically, his face looks different than it did when he was 17. What a massive shock. There were people who were kind of coming up with their theories on, is it filler? Did he get plastic surgery? Is it like a difference in weight? And at the end of the day, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter because the bottom line will forever be he looks different, which is expected because he's not 17 anymore and it's not High School Musical era anymore, which is something I didn't think I'd have to say. Before we get into this video, as you know, content like this is often demonetized, so I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Adam & Eve. Adam & Eve is America's favorite adult store. Not only does it come with discreet packaging, but they also donate 20% of their profit to help fight the spread of HIV around the world. They also have a 24/7 customer service and have 90-day no-hassle returns. If you go to adamandeve.com and use code GLARE, you'll get 50% off one item and free shipping in the US and Canada. Thank you, Adam & Eve, for sponsoring this video. The reason that I'm so annoyed is that there are memes basically body shaming him or face shaming him, image shaming him, whatever you want to call it, circulating. I cannot stand the weird kind of, it's not even a double standard, it's this continuous contradictory narrative that the internet makes that makes everything kind of shitty and even toxic at times. Let's look at some of these memes just so you get an idea. These are not the meanest ones also. These are pretty moderate considering what I saw. Bruh, Zac Efron can play human Shrek in the live action adaptation now. Zac Efron, High School Musical 4. Zac Efron, High School Musical 75. Some people might say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. People are always shitty on the internet, blah, blah, blah. Which, I mean, it's true, people are shitty on the internet, but at the same time, I think we've gotten to a place where there is the very, very common and very often regurgitated narrative of we shouldn't body shame people. If women want to get plastic surgery, they should be able to get it and not be shamed. If they don't want to, they shouldn't be shamed. If they are not a size 0, if they're plus size, whatever. We have a lot of that body positivity narrative on the internet, which in and of itself is a narrative I support. I do think we should be body positive. I don't think there's anything of value coming from telling someone you think they're ugly or they were hotter 10 years ago. Like, that's useless. On the other hand, complimenting people might make someone's day, whereas these types of shitty comments, it would cost you $0 to shut the fuck up and just not say them and move on. If you have to say them, maybe say it to a friend, but even then, I just think you should try to eliminate that type of thinking. The whole mental trajectory of thinking this person's ugly or they're not up to my standards, they're not as hot as they were whenever, and the audacity of posting that and thinking you're doing something and thinking you're making a point when the only point you're making is that you're being an ass. But the reason I wanted to talk about this is because, like I said, the narratives are contradictory because in one way, men have it less difficult in the sense of dad bod hasn't been labeled negatively. A lot of women like the dad bod. I'm sure a lot of men like the dad bod as well. Whereas often in those shitty magazines, women are just called fat or too thin or like there's no kind of appreciation for whatever the mom bod is. I've only seen mom bod used in a shaming way. So in one way, I think men have it easier in the sense of dad bods are appreciated. I am one of the people who appreciates them. On the other hand, though, men also have it more difficult because when they're victims of things, now, obviously, I'm not just talking about body shaming here, but when they're victims of abuse, they're often not taken as seriously if the abuser happens to be a woman. So in a way, men have it easier in that respect, but also harder because people here are clowning on Zac Efron's appearance. And it's okay because he's a guy, so who cares, right? Or, you know, there's the toxic masculinity of like, they can't have feelings, they have to have a thick skin, they can't let this affect them. And that's why it's so confusing and frustrating because there are these two living contradictions and there's no consensus. And the worst part of it all is that these people who are screaming about body positivity with their favorite woman icons are some of the people who just turn and then when it's a man, it's okay to rip them apart for how they look. I hate that because the basic consensus should be If you're body positive, it does not exclude anyone. You don't get to say, I'm body positive so long as it's my favorite plus size woman, but then when it's a man who looks different than he did when he was 17, or if it's a whatever, someone from another group, you get to just be like, oh, it doesn't count for them. If you're gonna be body positive, you can only say you're body positive if that includes everyone, or else guess what? You're just positive towards a certain demographic, and that to me is not body positivity. I can feel my blood pressure rising this very instant. The reason why I'm even more frustrated about this is that a lot of people are clowning on Zac Efron, but they're completely ignoring the more important things that he's been doing. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with him, but he's been spreading awareness. I think it's a documentary about the environment and how to protect and save the environment. He's been doing that. And people have also been using screenshots from said documentary to make fun of his appearance. And I'm like, imagine there's this big issue in the world with the environment, global warming, blah, blah, blah. And you decide that you're gonna watch that and take screenshots to make fun of how the person trying to bring awareness looks. Like, that is truly, truly embarrassing. I would hide for a while if I did that. The other thing I wanted to bring up related to Zac Efron, and the reason why I think I particularly relate in some minimal respect, is that he had, I don't want to put words in his mouth and say he had an eating disorder, but he had a very difficult relationship with food. And in fact, there was an article, he says, I'm so happy that I'm eating carbs again, he expressed to the table with food in his mouth. I went like years without eating carbs. When I shot Baywatch, I didn't have a carb for like 6 months. I almost lost my mind. You need this. I still can't get over how this diet of carbs and low protein is the exact opposite of everything any trainer has ever taught me. While Efron goes on to say he thinks the real secret to a long, prosperous life is to find a happy medium between food and exercise, it's clear how much filming the movie affected the way he looks at food. And as he said in the past, there's a reason why he's never getting as shredded as he did for a movie ever again. In the past, I had an eating disorder. Well, I had disordered eating, and then I was bulimic for 5 years, I think. I relate in some respects to how difficult it can be to have a normal relationship with food. When you've experienced an eating disorder, and I'm specifically talking about my own experience, obviously it's not the same for everyone, it's very difficult to get past the mental barriers you have put in place that control how you eat. Now, for example, for me, there was a certain list of foods that I was not allowed to touch. Those foods were loaded in a certain type of way, so whenever it was offered to me, whenever I wanted it, it was always a clear no, and you put up that barrier, and then you start putting up more and more and more barriers until you can only eat one food because you consider that safe. I'm not gonna go too much into detail, but you know, like, you'll calculate the calories of that food, so you'll rely on it because you know exactly how much you're eating, as opposed to if you eat something else. Like for me, I couldn't go to restaurants anymore unless the calories in food was listed. Like, it was a whole like life altering thing, because all of a sudden something that should be enjoyable and natural and easy turned into this. I couldn't go to social gatherings. I wouldn't eat at social gatherings. People started noticing that I wouldn't eat at social gatherings. Then you get the uncomfortable questions, and then you have to make up a reason why, or say that you're on a diet or some shit. And it's just an exhausting thing to experience, let alone the toll it takes on your body. That's also why I'm very mad about this, because so first of all, nobody should be shamed online, duh. But especially when someone has publicly voiced how horrible their mental state was when they were as shredded as they were, to have people on the internet, when you're doing environmental awareness work, for people to bring up how you look like is not only disgusting, but just so insulting, because again, it always comes back to the same thing. Like, these morons on Twitter that are making these jokes, trying to, I don't even know what they're trying to do. But when they're making these jokes, Zac Efron might not see them, but your friend who has an eating disorder might. Your friend who gained weight and is embarrassed about it might. Your friend who can't gain weight and is embarrassed about it might. Any friend of yours who is going through some problem with food, body image, their appearance, whatever, they're gonna see that. And as much as, you know, they might know who you are inside and maybe you're not a piece of shit, that still feels like shit. And at the end of the day, what did you accomplish? What? And obviously, we get back to the double standard I was talking about, where Whenever people do that on Twitter to women that I've seen, of course, I'm sure there are outliers, but most of the time when I see people shaming women, they're often ratioed by some other account being like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is the point of this? Why are you shaming this woman? I've seen it a lot of times of people comparing women and saying which one's prettier. And it's like, what is the point of all of this? And why is it that it's okay if it's Zac Efron or a man or someone who isn't identifying as a woman? Why are we making different rules for the same thing? It makes no sense to me. It infuriates me. It's exhausting and useless, and I hate it. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Tell me if you find this weird and contradictory standard going on. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and let's get